Good luck, have fun. Not supposed to be shooting at each other that much.
Did I fucking stutter?
Alright. Let's get these introductions knocked out of the way. Hello and welcome all. My name is SgtZdog. I won this last Battlestar Galactica Deadlock tournament. Joining me on the other side of the battlefield here is Sir Wagglepuss III, who won the previous two.
Hello.
So, this is part 3 of the tutorial series that we have been doing. Parts 1 and 2 were fleet composition and then the colonial ships in detail. Today we're going to do Cylon ships in detail. So, I figured we would start with the base stars in the same way that we started with the battle stars for the colonials, just because so much of your whole fleet revolves around those biggest ships, and of course you put all the base stars in the back where the Nemesis is going to have the hardest time getting to them. So I'm just going to start moving the Nemesis towards you to get those scouts in. Are you deploying like everything?
I was doing power distribution. Nothing's colliding. I should be good to go. In fact,
Yeah, I would hope nothing's colliding. Like, if you have stuff colliding on your deployment...
This is a very pell-mell fleet put together. I've not put this fleet together for performance.
I like how the map I've picked here has the wrecked Minotaur and Manticore behind you.
It's like I've just come back from business.
So
you have no idea how much I am just itching to deploy every single missile in my possession on that Nemesis.
Oh, don't do that until after I've at least scouted everything, and we've talked about the Nemesis. You can annihilate
now remember,
the
guys,
Nemesis.
if you had just one scrambler, you could avoid the 10 or 12 salvos that I was about to point at that Nemesis.
Yeah.
I'll let the base stars pick up the pace a touch.
Yeah, that'd be good.
I assume you can definitely see the Argos.
Yeah, I can see the Argos, but that's it, because everything else is really far away. Please, base star? Yes, good. Okay, I can get the lot. Wait, hey, why do you have a Talon instead of a Hydra?
Whoops.
That's fine. We can talk about the Hydra without actually showing it.
Well, to be fair, it is the Talon.
Yeah.
So, they're not missing much.
No, they're not. Alright.
Taken off the fire control power real quick, so I don't turn that poor Nemesis into chunks.
Yeah. I'll just turn it now, and
we're professionals.
Yeah, we're professionals. We've done this before. Anyway, so let's get started. So I figured we'd start with the base stars, as I said, because they kind of serve as the core for Cylons in the same way the battle stars really kind of serve as a core for a lot of colonial fleets. And I don't think we can talk about base stars without talking about the base star first. Like, it's such a classic, both literally and figuratively, since it was designed after the base stars in the original series. So obviously the whole classification is named after this ship. I should have it so that we're at least looking at the front of it. It's the most generic of them. It gives 2 fighters, a support squadron, and 2 munition slots. It has moderate armor. It has 2 guns. There's really not anything not to love about it. When we're using it, yeah, go ahead.
The base star, it is very much, it is that ship that you will throw into your fleet when you've decided, I need a bit of extra munition power, I need a bit of extra squadron power, and I need it pretty cheap.
Yeah.
2 squadrons, plus a support, and 2 munition slots is pretty much a bargain at 1,150 points for what you're getting back, just based purely on that alone. And then you throw into the fact on that you've got 200 hull points, and you've got 60 armor points that if you spin the base star quickly, you can rotate very easily through all of those armor facings and basically get about, 240 armor out of it as you spin the ship around?
Yeah, just off
base
the
star is-
side armors, the
It is.
non-top and bottoms.
I've made the rest of my fleet, but it needs this extra little bit. It needs this extra little bit of filler, and it just fills in that gap nicely. And it's also a very, very solid support piece if you don't have the various DLCs. Like, if you need that munition vomit, if you need that squadron bulk, it will do the job. And it does it on the cheap.
Yeah, and let's go ahead and have it do its full turn, because I want to showcase that, because that's such an important part of the ship. Because, it's got that 240 armor that you can use just by spinning the ship. Not even having to use the top and bottom armor. It gets 240. And if you can showcase real quick, how much this thing can turn, because like we talk about spin to win in the Discord chat all the time, but it's very literally true for this ship. When it's getting shot at, whether it's from torpedoes that it can't avoid.
Yeah, so for reference, the movement pattern that I've gave it is a full left turn plus a full left rotation. It's pointing directly forwards. The end of this turn, which I'm going to hit now.
And I want to say it hits like close to 180 degrees. It's like 170, 175.
It goes further.
Oh, does it go more than? Oh, wow! Look at that. That's
like, look at it go.
That's almost. It's like 260, almost a full 270 degrees from its original orientation there.
Base Star has got places to be. Base Star has got things to do.
Yeah.
And then the next round, all you got to do is give it a movement order and point it back in the direction that it came from, and it will do that entire spin and flick back into its original direction.
Yeah.
So it continues to rotate. If you try to keep turning in a left-hand turn, now that we've done that big left-hand spin, what will happen is you'll only do a minor turn and you won't get a big rotation out of it.
Right.
So a lot of fire will keep coming into the one angle. If you want to do the spin to win, what you're doing is not actually spinning constantly in one direction. You are spinning and then snapping back to your original direction. Spin, snap, spin, snap.
Yeah, it's a back and forth.
And if you do that, you will just constantly rotate through all of your armor arcs, and anything less than dedicated gunship fire on it is going to have a hard job. Like incoming munitions, like guided missiles especially, will start to get spread all over those surfaces.
Yeah. So, yeah, thank you very much for showing that. In terms of using it, the squadrons and the munitions really make it an excellent long-range support. The two heavy guns don't really give it enough throw weight and its low movement speed don't make it a good frontline ship.
Yeah, so later on when we talk about the Cerberus, you'll hear me especially talking about just how surprisingly efficient its 3 heavy guns are.
Oh yeah.
This is not the case for the Base Star.
Yeah, and only 2. It's missing a third of the firepower.
It may as well have a pair of googly eyes slapped onto the top and bottom of the ship, and that is its heavy gun performance.
Yeah. It'll outgun a Nemesis.
It can contribute damage, but the Base Star is not going to be hunting things down by itself unless there is some seriously memey shit going on.
Yeah. Its guns are probably, if I had to give one use to the guns, it's probably more for finishing off a severely wounded opponent from your munitions or squadrons or whatever.
And
scaring away like a lone Manticore or Nemesis.
And if you're in combat and the Base Star has come along, which the Base Star, even though it's slow, it is more than capable of coming along deliberately to engage with the fleet because it's a brick of hull points. Once it's expended its munitions and its fighters are out of the hangars, its existence is to soak damage. So at that point, you want it to go and engage once it's bled out all of its munition stock. In that case, once it gets into gun range, those two heavy guns that it's got are kind of useful for hitting exposed armor points and consistently dealing damage to a subsystem and keeping it down whilst it repairs.
And of course, it does have two top and bottom. So of course, if you get, between targets that are above and below you, you can use 4 heavy guns, which is at that point not terrible. So
on the same token, it has a massive blind spot in the center of it.
It does.
Maneuverable ships will get into that blind spot. Like the Talon that you can hopefully see just next to it can close in and it can sit in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And just hammer into it without taking any return fire. Berserks can do it, Adamants can do it, Talons can do it.
I fit an Artemis in there. You can fit a Berserk, though that's difficult to actually stay there.
And now we see the base star flip back.
That counter spin, yeah.
Just spin, spin, spin.
Yeah.
If you've got a base star and you're not spinning, you're wrong. That is not opinion, that is fact.
And I would say, at this point, because you've offset the extreme turn, you may be better off continuing to come back around the other way.
This is very context sensitive, and it depends upon how much damage you've taken upon your armor faces, where the enemy's coming from. But after you've done the flick back, you'll have countered the forces, and you're free to choose what is appropriate to the situation. We'll give a lot of advice on what things can do, what they're capable of, but always bear in mind that your best friend is adapting to the situation that is in front of you.
Oh, yeah.
Having a plan is good. Being completely unable to adapt to a situation as it develops is bad.
Yep. So, the base are really kind of a nice jack of all trades. At really a bargain price. It's what, $11.50 base?
Yes.
So, hard to go wrong with that. Moving on from there, I think it's probably the Cerberus. It's the next oldest design of the base stars for the Cylons. It's a decent bit faster, still not real fast, but it's a decent bit faster. Sadly, still too slow to really dodge torpedoes. But you get another heavy gun and another support squadron and a much better evasion stat on the squadrons as well.
Yeah, if you want to make a direct comparison to the Colonials, the Cerberus is your Atlas.
Yeah.
Except the Cerberus, it can move. It can go and get things done, and it can contribute pretty nicely to gunfights when it actually joins in. But it is primarily there to bring those 4 squadrons into the fray with its 3 fighter slots mainly. Its raiders that the Cerberus brings are as good as you are going to get for the Cylons for squadron support. Even if you've got all the DLCs, all the ships in the game, odds are a Cerberus is probably going to find its way into your fleet, unless you're building something rather specific. So this thing just bulks up your squadron power hard.
Yeah, having, in the same way having 1 Atlas or 2 Atlas helps out a lot, 1 or 2 Cerbs goes a long way towards providing you some extra fighters, getting that war driver in to help support your fighter ball. And, just like the Atlas, where it's not this huge gun presence, but, 3 heavy guns or 3 heavy guns, it makes a difference.
And I've been told on so many occasions by the devs that the heavy guns that Cerberus has are the same ones as the base star. And I don't get it, but it just feels to me like the Cerberus's heavy guns are so much more accurate than the base star's heavy guns. The Cerberus's heavy guns can hit things. They can chip away at squadrons, and to any capital ship that's not like a base star that's pummeling it, a Cerberus will come out of nowhere and do surprising amounts of damage.
Yeah. I think it's really just a case of having that 50% more firepower because I that hasn't been my experience, but I know Fourth IL really likes the heavy guns on this as well, in terms of their accuracy, and yeah, it's a really great solid ship. It comes in even cheaper at 1050, 1000.
I think it's 1,100. I've got the guide. I can confirm that. Yeah, 1,100.
1100. Okay, so yeah, 50 points cheaper than the base star, um, and you get better evasion, extra squadron, higher speed. If you don't need the munitions of the base star and you want a little more fighter presence, the Cerberus will not lead you astray. You got some more armor to make up your lack of hull. Um, it's a great ship. I love it.
Yeah, if you end up running Kratos or an Argos, odds are a Cerberus is going to find its way to help bulk up your squadron numbers.
Yeah.
Also, to note, the Cerberus and the Base Star are the two Cylon ships which get the support slots.
Yes.
So, just to talk about those support slots, the number one thing that you're probably going to want to go for, that was a sentence,
Yeah.
is the War Driver.
Yeah.
Like, if there is one support ship for the Cylons, one support squadron, that you can just think of something that you can do everything with, and it will not be a bad pick. You can pick out things with all of the rest of the supports that will be like, if it bumps into X, then it's going to suck. If it bumps into Y, it's going to suck. The War Driver's got you covered. It's AMD. It can harass capitals with its hacking. It can join in with the squadron battles. Like,
It
if
is
you
also
don't know
not
what
that
you want to
anyone
get in that
uses.
support squadron and you have points, grab a War Driver.
Yeah. It's also the best scouting squadron for the Cylons. Not that anybody really uses them for that, just because they're so valuable. But it is the best for that role because of its speed and high Dratus range.
Mm.
The only thing the War Driver is really not any good for is torpedoes. It will do nothing.
Oh, yeah, that is like the one thing it cannot help you with. But considering everything else that it does, personally, I can forgive it.
Yeah. Yeah. It has an effective tool for pretty much everything else but torpedoes. So I think that's a forgivable sin. Yeah.
Like, there is nothing wrong with bringing Scorpions or bringing
Vespids and heavy
Vespids.
raiders. Yeah.
Heavy Raiders. I'm a bit more, but you get them for free. And
Yeah.
you can use them as completely disposable scouts, or you can just blend them into the fighter battle,
Yeah.
and it's more HP for the enemy to shoot at. But like, you can still make arguments for bringing along Scorpions and Vespids along in support
Yeah.
slots. But if you're unsure and you've got points spare, grab a War Driver.
I have to admit, for me, on the base star and Cerberus support slots, I tend to favor the War Drivers and leaving the other support slots into a Gorgon. Um, regardless of the choices. But we'll get to the Gorgon more later.
Yeah.
So
You get some interesting choices once we get there.
Yep. So I think the next one to talk about here is the Argos,
Oh boy, the Argos.
which, yeah, I mean, like, this is the nod towards, we are starting to progress, the doctrine towards what we see in the Second Cylon War. Like, this is the predecessor to the Base Star in the Second Cylon War, in the same way the Minerva is the predecessor to the
Mercury.
Mercury. Thank you. Say, what was the Pegasus class again? No, brain farting.
Mercury.
Yeah. So this gives you the better computers reflected in its ability to have the tactical jump. It gives you squadrons. It gives you munitions, and it doesn't support a single gun.
Yes, the Argos is completely unarmed. So if you are going to make movements that include getting closer to your enemy, be very, very considerate about what you're going to do, because once your munition slots are on reload, the Argos is helpless.
Yeah.
However, on that note, because it has 0 guns to play with, the Argos has a munition resupply factory on board.
Yeah.
It can replenish its own munitions, and that is any munitions. So that includes a nuke. So if you pop
Yes.
nukes onto this thing, it is the one ship in the game where you can consider putting a nuke, or three if you're adventurous and have that many points to bleed.
Yeah.
This is one of the ships that can pull it off, and it's not a complete waste of your points,
Yeah.
because you will resupply. For those that are interested, the resupply rate is based upon the armory subsystem. So the more power you put into it, the quicker it resupplies. The amount that it resupplies does not change. It will always give you one standard salvo's worth. So with torpedoes, that means it'll give you 14 torpedoes back every time it resupplies. And at its fastest power output, when you put it up to 30 points, it is 6 turns to make one of those reloads.
Yep. It doesn't have a whole lot of armor, but it does kind of make up with that by getting even more hull. It also has its fire control in the rear, which is probably worth mentioning. Just because that's kind of an atypical location.
Thing.
Yeah. Thank you for the follow, Chaos by Design. And one of the reasons I want to mention the fire controls on the rear is because since the Argos has no guns to make getting close an incentive, it does a lot of running away. It's probably worth always strafing it to the as much as you can, just to minimize the exposure to that rear armor in case the enemy shoots, torpedoes or whatever at you, or guided munitions that you don't have anything around to intercept. But yeah, so the Argos is really fast. Like an Artemis can,
or a base star.
Yeah, really fast for a base star, but that does mean that it's fast enough that like an Artemis can only barely catch it. Once you throw in the Argos's FTL jump, tactical jump, a lot of things it can outrun. Jupiter's, Atlas's. They're not going to catch it at all. I want to say a Minerva doesn't lose enough speed compared to an Artemis. It can still catch the Argos, but it's going to have an even harder time. And of course, using its tactical FTL jump, it can get above and below flak after, I don't know, what, 10, 15 turns?
One thing that just popped to mind, by the way, a very Cylon specific thing. Once we've gone through the general overview, I would like to do a brief point by point on power system distribution for the various ships.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's a big thing that is not latently obvious to everyone. Not going to go over that this second. We'll come back to power distribution at the end, because it is quite specific ship by ship, and we've already started to go through them. But we'll do that once we get to the end.
Yeah.
But I want to bring that up.
Yeah, we will definitely do that. So, yeah, Argos, let's see. I think we talked about pretty much everything. Oh, it is a lot more expensive than the base star and the Cerberus. At
1,750 points.
Yeah. So
you pay a premium for the Argos, but what you get is basically constant, uninterrupted missile vomit. The Argos is a constant source of pressure. Even if you hit absolutely nothing with the Argos' munitions, it is constantly putting pressure on them. It is forcing a response from the enemy. Squadrons have to go after those missiles. Flak has to be put up and angled towards it. Lighter ships may have to split off and go and engage it. The big thing about the Argos is pressure.
Yeah.
That is the biggest concept around it. It's constantly putting the other person under a ton of pressure to provide some kind of response to it. Because the moment they stop putting some kind of response to it, the Argos has the capacity to put a lot of hurt onto a target. And Waggle's recommended go-to loadout for munitions for an offensive setup on an Argos is 1 armor piercer and 2 guided missiles. That will do serious damage to anything that gets hit by that salvo. And if you run a pair of Argos, you start getting into one-shot territory for a lot of ships in the game if both of that hits a target at once.
Yeah. And it's worth mentioning that with its ability to reload munitions, the the only two ships that even come close to contending the Argos's endurance with munitions are the Battlestar and the Nemesis, because they don't have the faster reload speed.
Yeah.
Every other Cylon ship with munitions besides this one, the Battlestar and the Nemesis, have faster reloading munitions, and they can end up burning through their munitions. The Argos gives you the endurance to really do a longer game, which is a really key feature for it. It is expensive enough. You probably don't want to bring more than two. You can bring a third, or technically a fourth, but think really carefully before you bring 3 or 4.
The theoretical max, I believe, is 5 that you can pop into a fleet.
Can you fit 5? I don't know that that would be a good idea, but okay.
You shouldn't do it.
Yeah, yeah, because
Like, this is... Oh, no, you can't do 5 anymore.
You can't do 5?
4 is the
Okay.
count now.
Yeah. But feel pretty comfortable bringing 2 along. That's not going to be an issue. Think carefully before you bring the third. You probably don't want to go with 4. You run out of enough points to get the upgrades. And the hangar bay on it is not super great.
Yeah,
So.
the Argos is all... Everything about the Argos is quantity over quality. It's all about just throwing as much crap out at the enemy as is mechanically possible. So what I did then.
Yeah.
Also, the Argos is one of the Cylon ships that has an enhanced munitions size. The Kratos is one of the others that get this. So when you divert power to the fire control system, you can push its salvo size all up to 162%.
Yeah.
So that starts making for extremely large guided missile salvos, like 9 guided missiles in a single salvo, which means you can just pour out these streams of munitions. But bear in mind that munition resupply factory is only doing a standard salvo. You can bleed yourself dry and basically be scraping the bottom of the barrel, so be mindful about how many munitions you're actually throwing out. If you just need to put constant pressure on an opponent, cycle through the tubes. Just fire them one at a time, because it's effectively a tube is down for 3 turns, so you can just cycle one after the other if you just want to put a stream of pressure on the opponent. If you want to go in for the kill, you can pop off all 3 at once and go for a kill shot once you know you can get past flak, the AMD's down, and the likes.
Yeah.
So be mindful about how fast you are putting out those munitions. Sometimes it's good to vomit them out. Sometimes that is what you want to do. Just consider what's going on before you commit to it.
Yeah, because I want to say you can fire about twice as fast as it can reload with the armory.
Easily.
So, you can handily burn out before you finish a game. It's just that the armory does mean that burning out is not the end of the world for the ship. So that is
and
nice.
It does extend its munition presence as well, because it's actively reloading
even
whilst you still have some in the stack.
Yeah.
And I've spoken about offensive loadouts for this thing. It can also do support loadouts pretty nicely. Scramblers, comets. You can do mines, but honestly,
I don't know that I'd want it close enough to do mines effectively, though.
Cylon mines are just not as good as colonial ones. Like, the cluster mine is just meh. The proximity mine is okay, but there are just much better choices.
Yeah.
Whereas colonials can get the EMP mine, and that shit's dangerous.
EMP mine and debris mine are both extremely formidable.
Scramblers and comets on an Argos, if you slip one of them onto it, you've basically got a constant source of these now.
Yeah.
A constant source of scramblers is really nice for basically providing the AMD that a war driver might have done, and you are running really shy on your squadron slots, but you've got plenty of munition slots around it, and you don't want to commit to war drivers. Like, yep, okay, I'm going to grab myself Comet or a Scrambler.
Yep. All right, I think that takes us on to the Kratos next, which I have to admit, I just noticed with the lights in the arms, give it a very kind of the Cylon Raider feel out of the TV show of the red light beaming through.
Mm-hmm.
This is a nice touch. Anyway, so yeah, Kratos. It's the biggest, meanest of the base stars to the point of it has so much firepower. It's almost like a battle star. 10 heavy guns top, 10 heavy guns bottom. That is scary.
Like, anything but a Jupiter is going to have some concern upon trying to engage in a direct firefight with this thing.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, it is the Cylon's most expensive ship at 2,650 points.
Yeah.
You can technically have 3 of these in one fleet, and I say that as a technicality, as you will be left with about 50 points left, and you will be running it completely vanilla.
Yeah. It does have 120 armor on top and bottom each, so it's got enough armor and guns to go shot for shot with just about anything. I think on guns alone, pretty much the only thing that'll really beat it is like a Jupiter 2. I think the Jupiter 1's slightly lower armor will just barely be its downfall.
And if you can get to a decent angle with the Kratos, and what you would do is you would reserve your tactical jump, because yes, the Kratos also has a tactical jump, which is another short-ranged variant of it. The Argos and the Kratos have short-range tactical jumps, so they don't go as far as the Phobos. So, for example, the Kratos can only get 2,320 meters max on its jump range. It's not that much.
Is it
but
just a little bit longer range than the Argos for the Kratos?
No, the Argos
is the same.
The Argos has 2,900.
Oh, so it's actually just a hair under. Okay.
Yeah, the Kratos is 2,320. The Argos is 2,900. So there's like a good 400 to 500 meter difference between the two. Whereas the Phobos is in excess of 8k.
Yeah.
Like, the Phobos can go places.
Phobos has places to be. So yeah, besides the 10 heavy guns, it's got 3 munition slots, which literally can fire every turn. It has no reload timer on the munition slots, which is frightening when you do things like give it 3 torpedoes. As you mentioned earlier, we'll mention it again. The Kratos is one of the Cylon ships that gets bonus salvo size. So this will pour munitions out incredibly quickly. It's probably worth mentioning, though, that you want to be really careful not to run out. This will run out its munitions incredibly quickly. Even if you create mines, you'll still run out of munitions in 10 turns.
For reference, with the 163% salvo size on the Kratos, torpedo standard salvo size is 14 for the Cylons. That means you are firing off 22 torpedoes from a tube. You've only got 98 torpedoes to go with. That's 4.5 salvos, and then you're dry.
Yeah. Which means, it's great for picking on anything, even Battlestars, but if you're shooting at something with flak, don't do it while the flak is still able to intercept it. You'll end up just wasting a significant price point of this ship. And don't shoot torpedoes at things that are nimble like Nemesis. Also a waste of your really expensive torpedoes.
Yeah, so the Argos is all about maintaining pressure and slowly moving to a point where eventually its pressure either becomes overwhelming or it can, near the late stages of the game, exploit once AMD's gone. The Kratos is not about pressure. The Kratos is about keeping its salvos in the bank and using them when it matters the most, because those salvos will always be available.
Yeah.
Like, you can run 3 torpedoes on a Kratos, and you can pump out 198 damage per turn with its torpedoes alone, which is a scary ass thought.
Yes.
But it won't mean a damn thing if you're firing it into flak.
Yeah.
This is where using the tactical jump once you get into close quarters to rapidly change your position and go for blind spots is where the tactical jump on this thing shines. Like, you don't use it so much to get around, although you can in the early stages of a match. You'll want to keep the tactical jump in the bank once you decide, now's the time that I'm going to start closing in with the enemy, and I want to start putting in salvos into where it's going to hurt.
Yeah, it's important to remember that because of the cooldown on that tactical jump, it will get you into a fight or out of a fight. It will not get you in and out. You have to pick. Um, so, be careful about picking the fight that you're going to be in. Uh, I talked about how it will happily trade shot for shot with any one ship, but, try and keep it to one because this thing's price point is only 50 points less than a Jupiter 2, and you will be feeling the hurt when this goes missing.
Yeah, and it is, of course, a base star class ship, so its fire control is in the back.
Yes.
This is something that you really, really need to keep in mind, because if the fire control on this thing goes down, it's 2,650 points worth of dead weight, even with the fast repair rate that the Cylons have. Because if the fire control on this thing goes down, it's probably gone down in a firefight, and that will be fatal.
Yeah, and it's worth noting, because of course, one of the things that a lot of the Cylons like to do is fire down into the fire control on Battlestars. But the engineering bay is on the bottom of the Kratos still, so doing that can be equally fatal to the Kratos. Yes, it's got 120 armor there, but that 320 hull will evaporate really quickly without an engineering bay at all.
For what it's worth, it is a choice to be made, because a lot of colonial ships have their fire control parked on top. A lot of the colonial, many Cylon ships also have it there. But for example, if you're starting to edge into combat distance with colonial gunships with battle stars, and you decide, okay, it is imperative that Jupiter Mark II loses its fire control, trading your engineering for a Jupiter's fire control, that's okay.
Oh yeah, no, it's definitely a worthwhile endeavor. It's just, it's one of those things to be careful about. If it's going to be a fight where you need this thing to stick around, you may be better off going underneath the Battlestar, knocking out its engineering, and killing it outright over just knocking out its fire control.
Yeah. On the same token, if you run torpedoes on this thing, you'll want to go into knife fighting range and just release them that close that the target just can't dodge them. In which case, you don't need to worry about hitting fire control so much, because if, like ZDog said, you go for the bottom, you can release all that damage into the bottom, crunch through the engineering, and in 2 turns that Jupiter's dead, whether it likes it or not. Possibly 1 turn.
Yeah, probably. I'd be kind of surprised, especially considering the bottom armor is softer on both Jupiters, if you don't crunch it in 1 turn.
It depends on how the heavy guns do with their accuracy, because it's 198 damage, but it's got damage reduction going through the bottom of the armor, and so on and so forth. Like, it's gonna hurt like a bitch. But
at the very least, you'll leave a mark on it for sure. I want to talk about this because people do go, "Oh, I'm gonna kill the Jupiter with my Kratos," or vice versa. I'm gonna use my Jupiter to kill the Kratos. The Kratos is reasonably fast for a base star class. However, it's not fast enough to overtake targets quickly. So you can't get over a Battlestar's flak fast enough to be able to use your munitions before it'll kill you with its Battlestar artillery. It has to be coming to you. Which kind of puts the Kratos in this a little bit weird situation where it has this huge amount of firepower, but you almost have to use it defensively. You have to let the enemy come to you. It can't just go straight at a Battlestar.
Yeah, if you want to go offensive with your munitions against a Battlestar, it will pretty much revolve very heavily around using that tactical jump to make.
Yeah.
Which means that you'll have to consciously probably take a round of fire at max range getting closer, and then on the next turn using the jump to get above the flak. Like, you got to be mindful that you're going to take some damage in the process and go for the payoff in the long run.
Yeah.
Whereas knee-jerk responses with the Kratos of like trying to play around at max range with stuff like Revenants and Minotaurs and stuff I'm going to do tends not to work out so much because the Kratos is a very committal ship.
Yeah,
Like,
it is a very committal
you
ship.
plan to
Don't
make an
chase an enemy
opportunity.
with it. Don't skirt the edges of range. And if nothing else, one of the big reasons you're not going to want to do it, because its guns are laid out over such a large area, you can easily end up with only, 4, 5, 6 guns able to shoot on a given target. Not all 10. Just because it's such a big ship. If you try skating long range, it wants to get in close.
Yeah, if you want to play the skating along at the edge of gun range game, there's better options for doing that.
Yeah.
The Kratos is a sledgehammer, but a sledgehammer that you have got to either wait for or create the moment to swing it.
Yeah. So.
And also, I really wouldn't put support munitions on a Kratos.
Yeah, I could see maybe putting one just because, the always available is nice, but I would not do more than one. This is such a big, I'm going to hit you, and I'm going to hit you hard.
Yeah.
Giving up a munition slot to do that?
Put one on there because of the base munition salvo size, and you are firing it every turn.
Yeah.
Like, this thing is, by design, supposed to drown the enemy in munitions once it finds the opening and just smother them.
Yeah.
Using a support slot on that is a little bit counterintuitive. Bring something alongside it that's got a munition slot and have that bring it. Bring an Arachne with a scrambler if you want to do that.
Yeah.
Have an Argos that's floating somewhere nearby and have that with its, constant reloading going on that can provide those. Like, this thing can put out an ungodly amount of torpedoes, armor piercers, guided missiles.
I think pretty much you want to stick to those 3. You're probably going to go either 3 torpedoes or 1 AP and 2 guided.
Yeah.
I think in general the 3 torpedoes are probably the best bet, but
I normally can't stand the idea of using torpedoes on most ships, but the Kratos is one of those where this is one where it makes sense.
Yeah, it's a big ship. It wants to hunt down other big ships. The 3 torpedoes will do that job.
Just don't fire them from half the map away.
Yeah.
Don't do that to yourself.
Yeah, it's not worthwhile with this, just because if you go after something that can dodge them, by mistake, heck, on the opening turn, Atlases still have pretty good odds of dodging them. Pretty much the only thing you're going to get guaranteed hits on is a Cerberus and a base star. And those have the hit
range,
points.
A regular base star. A Cerberus at max range can potentially dodge them.
Yeah.
And there is nothing more saddening than watching 66 torpedoes sail off into the abyss.
Yeah. So yeah, if you're running short on points, 1 AP and 2 guided is pretty feasible on this, but the 3 torpedoes is going to be the way to go. I would stick to, for the fighter slots, my taste is to stick to actual fighters. If you can get the Raiders instead of the Raider prototypes, great. I would not put supports on this, just because when you bring one of these, you're already so short on fighters.
Yeah. With the amount of points that this thing costs and the fact that it's only bringing 2 fighter slots, you pick the ship and you immediately feel starved.
Yeah. You immediately feel starved for fighters, and the Cylons really want to have some fighter control out. You don't need it as much with this because it's torpedoes, which aren't as easily intercepted as the guided munitions, especially at the ranges this thing wants to engage at. But not bringing a couple of fighters, I think you're going to be feeling pretty pinched. So, that's all of the base stars, though.
Also, I would make a pretty large vertical movement on your torpedo, because when the next turn passes, folks watching the video can see just how stupid the amount of firepower is that a Kratos can put out, and how easily it's dodged at any kind of range.
Okay.
TLDR, I'm firing torps at your Nemesis.
Yeah. Oh, at the Nemesis. Okay. That's good. I haven't bothered fiddling with subsystems on any of the others.
Like, what you're about to see is what you want to avoid at all costs.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
And the fact that this thing can do this every turn. Like, we hit the end of the turn and it's only barely stopped firing.
Boom. It's back up on its munitions.
Yeah.
Now, all of this is going to sail into the abyss. Whereas you can picture all of that being dropped into the top or the bottom of a Battlestar.
Yeah, Battlestar, I mean, that's enough that it's worth putting into an Atlas, especially if you haven't yet knocked out the fighters on the Atlas. That will really pick on just whatever you shoot it at. Don't waste it. That does bring us to the end of the base stars. Oh, one last note: the Kratos is expensive enough. Don't go with 3. Don't do that to yourself. It's entertaining to do like once.
If you bring 2 of them, you will be seriously choking your build. It's the equivalent of bringing 2 Jupiter Mark IIs. Like, if you try and do that, your options for a fleet build become very choked.
Yeah.
About the only thing that you can seriously consider bringing with 2 Kratos is a Cerberus.
Yeah.
But bringing as a single piece and bringing as an absolute sledgehammer and planning out and waiting for that moment to get in close and wreak absolute havoc.
Very worthwhile.
The Kratos is the Cylon ship that can do that.
Yeah. So, don't be afraid to bring 1. Think very carefully before you bring 2. Really don't bring 3 unless you're just going for something stupid, memey that's not going to work.
Try it once for the shits and giggles and then never do it again.
Yeah. Cruisers. So we just talked about the base stars, which, for Cylons, for Colonials, the battle stars kind of serve as your front line. The Cylon base stars are mostly long-range support. I mean, obviously the Kratos, wants to get up in something's face. But it's kind of the exception to that rule, which means that for Cylons, their cruisers end up serving as their front line. And none of them really want to go toe-to-toe with anything. They want to kind of skirmish. So your front line ends up being more of a skirmishing line than a front line. And let's start with the Arachne. The Arachne, I want to say the in-game description is that it's like a Battlestar or something. Like it's a pocket Battlestar or a small Battlestar or something.
It is the Cylon's closest equivalent to a Battlestar, which you can kind of see where they're coming from with decent guns, relatively well armed.
It's got 3 top guns,
it's
2
and
front
it's got
guns.
squadron slot and the munition slot.
Yeah.
It's the all-rounder. Like, it has something for every occasion.
But I almost feel like the closer comparison is it's a beefed up Adamant. Which admittedly the Adamant is a lot like a Battlestar too. But this is almost more like a beefed up Adamant than it is a real Battlestar.
The Arachne is what the Adamant would like to be.
Yes. Standout features. Once you max out that navigation, it is really nimble. I don't know. What is this? If I go into...
So the Arachne, once you
speed.
fully pair its navigation, it has the same mobility as an Artemis, except it's got much finer control over its vertical and its sharp turning.
Yeah.
I
feel like it's as fast as an Artemis
is on par with the Artemis, but its actual turning, its ability to try and accurately skirt max range and choose your armor facings, it is much more nimble on the turning than an Artemis.
Yeah. So it's 5 guns, make 5 mediums, I believe. 3 top, 2 front, all mediums.
Correct. All mediums.
Means that it's pretty versatile in terms of what it decides to shoot at. Its munition slot is every other turn. which makes it really pretty flexible about, um, what do you want to bring on it? It's pretty happy if you want to bring, an offensive munition like guided missiles or AP missiles. It's pretty flexible if you want to bring one of the support munitions, scramblers, or
Comets.
common
Or
PCMs,
PCMs even.
or even just standard PCMs. Uh, the one
Like, the
squadron.
Arachne is very much happy with whatever you give it for
Yeah.
munitions. If it's a decent munition that you've thrown on it, the Arachne is pretty much happy. I have a personal preference to, if I bring an Arachne, to sticking a scrambler on it because of its fairly rapid reload munition tube. It's fire, down, fire, down, fire, down.
Yeah.
Doing that with a scrambler means you can take an Arachne alongside some Revenants, and what you can do is you can drop a scrambler, get into its radius, break missile lock, stay around there, deploy another one, and you can basically hop between scramblers if you've got this Arachne present, and you can bring it along and decide, okay, so I don't need to spend slots on a war driver to do this, and I don't have to worry about it getting shot down by Vipers. That's a personal Waggle application for the munition slot. If I bring a cheeky Arachne along.
And now on camera is a nice close-up view of a torpedo, because I found a good zoom level that puts it right between the camera and the Arachne.
Goodbye, torpedoes.
I love how they've put so much detail. This is complete non sequitur. I love how they've put so much detail into the munitions that most of the time are just little glowy dots.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you never see these things. But then if you get the camera to be able to see one, they actually have like a lot of detail in them. I love that. Anyway, so yeah, Arachne, I think we covered pretty much everything. I usually keep regular fighters on it in the fighter slot, just because...
It's got a decent hangar, and it's got one slot, and it can carry raiders, so you should be carrying raiders in the slot on this. Typically speaking,
always use
especially
another fighter.
support slots being a thing, if you want to bring war drivers, scorpions, vespids, or heavy raiders if you're broke, ideally your Cerberus or your Base Star should be carrying those.
Yeah, Cerberus, Base Star, Gorgon, things that are dedicated support slots are better uses.
Things like the Arachne and the such, like non-base starships that have a squadron slot, you'll usually want raiders or preferably heavy. Raider Mark 1s on there.
Yeah.
I want to say heavy raiders.
Raiders
like,
instead of Raider prototypes if you can afford it.
Yeah. Also, combat note for the Arachne: dive.
Yeah, you have most of your guns are on top. Make sure you're below your target so you can use the top guns. It has ample maneuverability to get below pretty much everything.
No ventral firepower. You have nothing on the bottom of the ship.
Yeah.
If something
you have
gets
the two
underneath
front
you,
guns.
yeah. Optimistically, 2 front medium guns. Realistically, if something starts getting below you and it starts to get any kind of flank, the only thing you'll have left is your munition slot on the Arachne.
Yeah.
You don't want to end up in that position. If you have Arachne, dive. Be under your opposition. If you're not under the opposition, you will suffer.
Yeah. Fortunately, the only things that... There's not much that can really reliably get below it. I mean, it's like the Nemesis, Cerastes, Talon, maybe? I doubt it. Things that can jump like the Phobos, but...
there are some colonial things that can do it. Manticore, the Adamant can consider it, the Berserk can consider it, but like, the Berserk's really, really fragile, so if you start hitting it with 2 medium guns on there, it'll feel it, and the Adamant, if it tries it, can potentially be threatening, but those 4 light guns are going to take a while to get through the Arachne's armor.
And in the meantime, the Arachne can...
For its price tag, the Arachne does have substantial armor and hull.
It's worth noting, it has the most armor on its front and top, but those are also the surfaces that it needs to shoot with. So, use it, but bear in mind that once those get punched through, it's going to start feeling some pain. I'm trying to remember what's on front for this. Is it Tech Bay?
I can tell you that in one moment. On the front is the armory.
Yeah, front is armory, so you don't mind getting the front shot through, but you do have fire control on top, like is so common. So be careful. Yes, you want to be below your target. Don't get too far below. It will hurt, and you will turn the
Um,
thing into a useless brick.
Also, with Cylon ships, they have all of them have very high accuracy on the guns. Um, Even the base star that I crapped on and basically said that it's got two googly eyes where its gun should be has relatively high accuracy.
Yeah. If I
So on that token, you'll be
120%. I'm sorry, 125% accuracy, and Cylon guns in general are more accurate. So
yeah. So combat-wise, you'll generally want to be skirting max range, especially if you're engaging battle stars. That being said, with an Arachne, you don't want to be engaging dedicated gunships with an Arachne.
yeah, they will outgun
Things,
it. It only has 5
things
guns.
like the Minotaur, the Heracles, the Revenant, they're going to do bad things to an Arachne. Those things are what your munition slot's for.
Yeah. I am kind of showcasing here. It can go almost perpendicular to its direction of movement. So, use that to your advantage to keep the range open, and stay on the edge of the range. Use that high accuracy. Use the fact that it has nice, relatively lightweight medium guns that don't suffer from being at longer range as much.
And if there's nothing else, if there's no capitals to shoot at, absolutely focus fire on a squadron, because Cylon medium guns, they will hit the mark.
Yeah, 5 medium guns is a significant punishment on squadrons.
That will contribute.
And it has a really long close range bracket that it can use to support squadron fights that are even reasonably far away from it. So don't hesitate to use it.
And a big thing about the Cylons is they have no munitions that can assist them in dealing with squadron fights.
Yeah.
So if they want to gain an edge in dealing with squadron fights, they need the squadron brawl to happen in range of their gunships. And the dedicated gunships, like the Revenant and the Arachne, have the mobility to get out there and get it done.
Okay, so the next one I'm going to cover is actually going to be the Phobos. I should probably cover the Revenant next, but the Phobos is actually really rather similar to the Arachne, so it makes a better next step.
Stats-wise, yeah, it ain't too far off.
Yeah.
I mean, thinner for the most part.
Yeah, you end up losing out overall a little bit of armor, but it ends up with more top armor, which, since that's the armor that's most important for the ship, is probably okay. Top, it, and I'm gonna look at the Arachne real quick here while we're at the end of the turn, because I just wanted to highlight just how much. So you can see here, guys, on how the Arachne can shoot at things perpendicular to the direction it's going, and it can use that to keep that range open. Do so. You will get much better benefit out of your Arachne that way. So yeah, the Phobos loses one of its top medium guns. It only has 2 now. They are mediums, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's all mediums on the Phobos.
And you go from, where are the light, the rear one? It has 1 rear medium gun that's on the bottom. I didn't realize it was on the bottom. I thought it was on the top.
Yeah, the Phobos is not really a gunship by any stretch of the imagination.
You can use the fact that it's a rear gun to at least shoot at things as they're trying to chase you.
Yeah. The Phobos typically wants to do its best to be underneath targets to take advantage of the fact that it's got something that resembles armor on top, and that's where the guns that it does have are positioned.
Yeah.
The Phobos is all about making use of its FTL jump. And that FTL jump can go in excess of 8 kilometers. Specifically, it can go
8,400.
Yeah, 8,400. Which
and
is a hell of a jump.
Yeah.
Now, I'll get it out the way. The one thing that you can do with the Phobos, which, if you do this in multiplayer games, I can guarantee that what it's going to achieve is probably a game win, but it will also probably piss off the person you're playing against. And the Deadlock multiplayer community is fairly tight knit.
Since there
Everyone
are
seems
no
to know
random
each other.
matches, every match has
Yeah.
to be coordinated. Don't piss off your opponent too often. It's a good way to not
So
be
if
able to
you-
get any more matches.
If you become that guy that does nothing but Phobos jumps to
Into
jump
an
your
enemy ship.
Phobos into an enemy ship and blow it up, it's like, oh, I can take out a Jupiter Mark II instantly. It's like, yes, you can do that, but you will also very quickly run out of people to play games against. So yeah, that's the thing that you can do. But if you want to use it in a non-cheesy, non-troll, non-lolsy way, you can use that FTL jump to get yourself into advantageous positions very quickly. Now, an advantageous position is getting yourself into a good angle. You can just have guided missiles on a Phobos, but if you use that jump to get into an angle where flak is not present, you can start to put pressure on your opponent. Now, a word to the wise, unless you're strapping a nuke to this thing and going for a pretty close range deployment, and you don't care what happens to the Phobos, don't jump within 6,000 meters of your enemy.
Yeah.
Because if you jump within there, unless you're jumping into a blind spot, you're going to immediately start taking fire. And the Phobos is made of paper. What you'll want to do is, earlier on in the game, is you'll want to use that jump to get into creative positions, to put pressure onto your opponent, to turn and break apart the consistency of the fleet. These nice, neat colonial stacks start to sweat as soon as they start taking incoming munitions, where their nice, juicy flak wall can't cover it anymore, and it starts to split apart. And as a fleet starts to fracture and split apart, you can start to close distance on isolated elements and use the Phobos' pretty strong hacking to start to disable ships that get a little bit unwise and split apart from the fleet.
Yeah.
And being able to disable those stragglers makes the Phobos dangerous there. Or you can just be that guy that just, yeah, there goes the Phobos.
Yeah.
Toodles. Or you can just be that guy that just throws it into a Jupiter Mark II and just don't get it.
And certainly, I mean, the Phobos, even if you want to use it conventionally, I know a lot of people don't really like it for its relatively high price point of 1,000 and change.
It is. It's 1,050.
1,050, yeah. So, like, this is as many points as an Atlas is. So, it's not cheap, but it is really useful still for, being able to put a squadron and a rapid-firing munition slot at an angle that is awkward for your opponent to have to defend.
And
almost everything in the game doesn't want things below it.
The previous statement, where most Cylon non-base stars, you want raiders on them, Phobos is the exception.
Yeah.
If you plant a War Driver, or a Scorpion, or a Vespid on a Phobos, then you jump into an awkward position. Combined hacking between a War Driver and a Phobos will very quickly break down ships' subsystems. If you use a heavy raider on there and you do a quick boarding, you can board a target, hack its armory, and you can start wreaking havoc on it with boarding, just out of the blue from nowhere. You bring a Scorpion, and having a Scorpion pop out at close range and start hammering a ship is bad news when you're very quickly taking 3 damage shots at a rate of fire of a medium gun, and it's just popped out from goddamn nowhere.
Yeah. Or, a Vespid, if he's already obligated his Vipers somewhere else, a Vespid from below is a handy addition to the every other turn munitions that the Phobos itself brings. There's a lot you can do to kind of harass from angles that are awkward for your opponent to defend against. Just, be aware that once that 75 top armor goes down, it's only got 80 hull. The fire control is on top, I believe. Oh no, is it tech bay? So getting into hacking range can be difficult.
The Phobos is one of the ships that has the capacity to completely shut down a Battlestar with its hacking, but on the same token, a Battlestar that gets the angle correct can shred a Phobos very quickly.
Yeah.
So the Phobos is played generally in one of two ways, which is incidentally to play it like the Argos or play it like the Kratos. You can play it in a Argos style fashion, where you use its jump to find those awkward angles and just keep on putting pressure onto your opponent that they have to react to and do something about, or start taking damage. Like, throw AP missiles onto a Phobos and jump high with it, you can start sniping the armor away from the tops of battle stars, and that is just nasty because then anything can start just taking scraping fire against the top exposed armor and start wrecking fire control systems.
Yeah.
And you can go for that really pain in the ass approach, or you can play it like a Kratos, where you play the waiting game.
Wait
for an
pick on an
opportunity to
individual
open up.
that's out of position.
Yeah, you wait for that opportunity to open up, and once you see it, you take advantage and snap, you jump in, you release your support squadron, you release your munitions, you start hacking away, and you just go for it.
Yeah.
But it's usually one of those two extremes that the Phobos tends to play to. If you just jump a Phobos into close range and think, yeah, I'm going to hack a Battlestar. Wait, why is my Phobos dead?
Yeah. It will get shot out before it can hack a Jupiter. I want to say it can hack a Minerva before the Minerva will shoot out its tech bay.
Depends on the range.
Yeah.
And if the Minerva can simply turn around and drop a pair of torpedoes into your face.
Yeah. Yeah, like, be careful, because the Minerva is going to have 2 munition slots to shoot at you with, on top of the 4 heavy guns on bottom. So, consider with care before you do it. Ideally, 2 Phobos if you want to try and hack out a Minerva.
But on the same token,
and Artemis, however, it will pick apart pretty happily.
With the Phobos, you'll want some kind of plan or some kind of strategy in mind. Even if it's one that you adapt on the fly, but you want some kind of strategy in mind. If you don't, and you just pick up a Phobos because it's cool, it can jump, and it's got hacking, odds are you're probably better off just bringing an Arachne.
Yeah. Yeah, have something in mind for the Phobos before you bring it. Because, yeah, if you're not planning on really using its ability to jump to get it into a good position, then the Arachne was the better call. It gives you more guns, it gives you better overall armor. The hacking is of only careful usefulness because of its comparatively short range to guns. And the Arachne has the same 1 squadron and 1 fast reloading munition. So, and it comes out cheaper than the Phobos. Arachne's 900 compared to the
950 on the
950.
Arachne.
So it's 100 points cheaper for the Arachne. So, yeah, the Phobos very playable, but know what you're gonna do with it before you do it.
Yeah.
One other thing I want to mention, the Phobos, despite being this, hacky, tech bay focused ship with its hacking and FTL jump, does not have a very good Dratus range. I mean, Colonials certainly wouldn't mind having it, but as Cylons go, its hacking range of Dratus range of 6,250 meters is not very good.
Yeah, so, that's pretty meh.
If you're bringing a Phobos for its scouting potential,
you don't bring a Phobos to scout.
Yeah, I mean,
you have to bring something to scout for the Phobos.
Yeah, you can do it if you really want to use your FTL jump that way, but it's not really the right way to use a Phobos. I think that's pretty much everything for that. Yeah. Using a Phobos with a nuke is a little trolly, but it's not nearly the same level of trolly as using the Phobos to suicide ram is, so don't be afraid to do that if you want. Like, that's not too bad.
Making a Phobos nuke happen and actually having it hit a target and do something significant requires a fair amount of setup, clearing of AMD, getting the angle correct, making sure that you actually get the timing correct on the launch itself with the jump. Like, there's a lot of things, mechanical and prep, that you need to do to make a nuke Phobos work.
Yeah.
Or oftentimes it's just going to fall flat on its face. Whereas if you do an FTL jump to just take out a ship, it's a point-and-click adventure, and quite frankly, it is no fun for the poor sap on the receiving end of it.
Yeah.
Don't be that guy. Just don't be that guy.
Yeah. So that's pretty much everything with Phobos. Let's move on to the Revenant.
Waggle's personal favourite Cylon ship. Like, between the Argos and the Revenant, it's a strong toss-up. But, like, the Revenant, yeah, it's up there.
Yeah. So, standout features. It's only 4 heavy guns on top and bottom, isn't it? It punches so hard it feels like more than 4, but it is only 4, isn't it?
I can't actually see a Revenant right now, so just to confirm that. Yeah, it's 4 heavies top, 4 bottom, 1 front, and 6 lights on each side.
That's right, I forgot it has 1 on front. It's not even worth mentioning the 1 on front, really.
Oh, it is. Oh, it is.
It's there. It's there.
It's a Revenant heavy gun. Do not discredit.
Yeah. But the 6 light guns on each side are scary. It has, great maneuverability once you crank up that navigation. It has the advantage of the fact that it only really needs to power up 3 subsystems: navigation, fire control, engineering, probably in that order. It has an advantage of the fact that it doesn't have its fire control on top. Fire control is on bottom, which it has, the speed to make difficult to get to.
Yeah, this thing is basically purpose-built to slip underneath Battlestars and hammer them.
Yeah. The only real downside it has is, for its price point, fairly thin armor. It wants to broadside to make use of those 6 light guns that it has, but it's only got 45 armor. It has 60 armor for once it's slipped below something, and they start shooting into its top. It doesn't care too much. Its heaviest armor is on front at 75, but that is where your engineering is, so feel free to use it, but don't use all of it. Using all of it will be a painful experience.
For what it's worth, if your Revenant is getting shot at by another ship, you are probably not playing the Revenant correctly.
Yeah.
The Revenant is very much a ship that wants to stay at max range and snipe down individual targets. You will seldom run a Revenant by itself. Personally, I run my Revenants at a minimum in pairs.
Yeah.
I have a preference to running 3 of them at a time, because 3 Revenants focusing on a single target will tear it to pieces.
Yeah.
It's like watching a group of sharks at work.
2 Revenants and an Arachne or 3 Revenants is really scary.
Yeah, because Revenants, now, all Cylon ships have 6,000 meter range. There's no range dispersion between that. All of them get this on the gun range. Whereas the Colonials all have like 5,800, with a couple of them having exceptions in the previous video where the Berserker will have a bit more, the Minerva will have a bit more, so on and so forth. So the maneuverability on the Revenant is to such a point that you can play the 200 meter range gap against Battlestars.
Yeah.
If you are fine on your motor control and know how to gauge distances properly. And it can turn an angle that well that as it falls back, it can constantly keep its entire broadside on a target. It's nuts, the maneuvers that you can pull with this ship.
Mm-hmm.
And the spirit of the Revenant is that it is a pack hunter that rips apart one target at a time.
Yeah.
You don't want to get into a full fleet brawl with the Revenants. If
it will
looks
lose.
Like you're
it
about
doesn't
to get
have
into
the
a full,
armor.
Yeah. It looks like you're about to get into a full fleet brawl. Pull off. reconsider your angle, and come back once you can get a single target with all 3 of your revenants, and only take possible return fire from that one target.
Yeah.
If they can bring their full fleet firepower to bear on your revenants, abort what you're doing, pull back, regroup, go back in.
And it's worth noting, Cylon light guns only have one range bracket, so don't like the Revenant with its ability to point its light guns backwards from its direction of travel, which I'm showing here on the stream right now, means that it's very happy just using those light guns on the edge of the range and getting, whatever hits it gets with the heavy guns, which will be, still a pretty decent number of hits. You may take, a few hits, like the Artemis is so long, or all of the Battlestars are so long that their front guns may be in range of you, even though you're only shooting with, just your lights, not even the heavies. The range accurate brackets, that's fine. And that can be okay, because your light guns won't have any accuracy penalty, and against large targets, you're pretty much going to be hitting pretty close to 100% accuracy.
Just out of curiosity, what's the processing power on the fire control for turret accuracy when it's fully juiced?
System processes. On this sucker, it's 148%. Which
yeah.
Does that mean it has a bonus to accuracy?
So regular Cylon ships have 125% turret accuracy. The Revenant has 148%. This
has
is why,
a bonus
and
to
I've been
accuracy.
telling everyone that the Revenant's heavy
Yes.
guns will snipe the shit out of squadrons.
Yes.
This is not me exaggerating. This is simple, cold, hard truth that in the longer range brackets they will still snipe the shit out of Vipers.
Yes.
You can put a Revenant or 2 underneath a squadron brawl, and they can shoot up with the 8 heavy guns.
Well, I don't
and they
know
will notably contribute.
about the long range brackets, but its close range bracket is, what is that? 1, 2, 3 kilometers, which is pretty big. And even if its second range bracket is still over 4 kilometers, it's got some reach with those heavy guns, and yeah, even those heavy guns will put some hurt on squadrons. The light guns, no range brackets at all, just close range, and 6 of them. This sucker will put some hurt on squadrons that are not paying attention to what they're doing. If you're going to hunt a Revenant with squadrons, do it from above or below, or in front or behind, where it can't use the light guns as well.
Preferably, if you want to hit a Revenant with squadrons, do it from behind and knock out its navigation.
Yeah.
A Revenant that loses its navigation is dead.
Yeah.
Use of the Revenant itself. It's an excellent pack hunter against capitals, as I lined out before. It's also worth noting that whilst the Serestus exists, the premier anti-aircraft capital
Is the
for the
Revenant.
Cylon is the Revenant.
Yeah.
Having a pair or 3 Revenants contributing into a fighter brawl will tip it heavily in your favour in a matched fight.
Yeah, the amount of accuracy you get on those light guns and the heavy guns is frightening.
They will tear into them. If you've got a pair of Revenants and they're firing, 3 of them that I run will drop a squadron per turn.
Yeah.
And they will do that consistently in the middle of a fighter brawl whilst they're pulling maneuvers. And that's Viper Mark IIs that have often got evasion going on.
Yep.
So what you will ideally want to do is the Cylons, because Vipers are just so much better than Raiders, it just is what it is you'll want to draw out their squadrons away from their fleet, and it can even be the middle ground in no man's land, which is fine. You then just break off your Revenants and make that squadron battle happen in gun range of the Revenants and watch them tear them to pieces with focus fire.
I don't know if you're offering a squadron up for sampling here, but
the Raider is going to ID half of your fleet that I've not seen yet.
Have you not? Here, I'll start moving ships towards you.
This fleet does not particularly have Dratus range.
Uh,
But yeah, the Revenant, when you're actually engaging in combat, keep it at max range. Even for the fighter brawls, I still have the habit of keeping them around max range. Deliberately pull down your squadrons, because Revenants are often going to be diving to take advantage of the
yeah.
most common blind spot, which is underneath. That being said, if your enemy's playing nothing but multi-purpose ships like Minotaurs and Battles and Jupiters and the likes that can all shoot in any direction they want, then just position yourself to start sniping fire control systems, which can mean going above.
Yeah.
Always skirt max range. Always focus all of your Revenants onto a single target, and use your mobility to make sure that nothing more than the target you are shooting at can shoot back at you. If you do one of these like line battles, like where you see ships of the line going at each other in a wall against a wall, the Revenants ain't going to excel at that.
No,
The
Revenant's going to
want
lose.
to pull out. The Revenants will want to pull out, skirt around, take a few turns to use some maneuverability, and come from the front of the enemy, or go from behind the enemy.
Yeah.
And even if they reposition to try and reset up their wall to you, then your other assets, like I love to run Argos with my Revenants, it's like the natural pairing, that then opens up incoming missiles to drop in on the targets. Even if they don't get to fire, the Revenants are that scary and that threatening that you can open up other opportunities by starting to do that push and the pressure. Like, you'll start to gather that a lot of Cylon play is about controlling the flow of the battle and making creative use of pressure, because if anything of the Cylons, apart from one or two ships, actually gets caught, it's dead.
Yeah. So, and I mean, don't be afraid. Play the long game with a Revenant. You know, only take shots that you want to take. Don't engage something that you don't have to. By the way, you're going to want to either move the Argos into scout or watch another Raider, because I'm going to kill that one.
I mean, you can kill it if you want.
So I think that pretty much covers the Revenant. Let me, yeah, it really does an excellent job of that skirmisher role that I talked about the Cylon cruisers really needing to take, with its high speed. The high accuracy guns are really excellent. Getting a surprising. Really? Are you? Oh, did I depower the tech bay on my? I did depower the tech bay on my Nemesis. Whoops.
Smooth. The one thing that you'll want to stay the hell away from with Revenants, by the way, is explicitly the Minotaur. A Minotaur can 1v1 a Revenant and come out on top.
Yes.
And it'll come out pretty healthy. And it's got the range, equal range with you, so the Minotaur's going to pull you to pieces. The Heracles is also another legitimate threat, but Heracles have a tendency to get a little bit stuck in with fleet maneuvers, trying to play with the flak. Minotaurs will sniff out your Revenants, and they will know that they exist to wreck your day.
Yeah.
Fear the Minotaur if you have Revenants. If you have Revenants in play and you see a Minotaur, start thinking about what your guided munitions are going to be doing, because they should be going for that goddamn Minotaur.
Okay. So that kind of covers all of the Cylon cruisers. So we're almost done here. Cylon escorts. I gotta love them. I mean, the Cylon escorts are all just amazing options. Well, they're all good options. Some of them are more amazing than others. Obviously, I think we need to really start that conversation with the Nemesis.
Oh yes.
Because it is the gold standard of Dreda's ranges. What am I sitting on here? 10,150 meters of Dreda's range. If your opponent lines his ships up on the front edge of his deployment zone, there's only a few maps where you can't have them scouted on turn 1.
And I think like that map is Caprica.
Is
It's
that the
silly.
only one? It wouldn't surprise me if there is only one. Um, you might
Most of
not
the
want to do
maps,
it on what's the one that's like nebula all through the middle even. That one it might be a little more. You'll want to at least be careful to go around the nebula on. Um,
but
but yeah,
generally speaking, the Nemesis, if it doesn't spot you on turn 1, with the exception of 1, maybe 2 maps, it will spot you on turn 2.
yeah.
If you have a Nemesis, there are no secrets to be kept from you.
As we saw in this, like even with your stuff in the back line, I was able to have it spotted on like turn 3. Don't count on anything going unspotted longer than turn 4 if the enemy has a Nemesis. Um, if you are running guided munitions, bringing at least one of these escorts along is necessary. The Nemesis is a great pick. But we should also talk about Nemesis after it scouted things. I mean, obviously, at 450 points, scouting the entire enemy fleet, it's made its points back. It is
Yeah.
so cheap. But you still have this, and you want to use it.
And it can do some stuff
Yeah.
after it's done its scouting.
So,
Like, it's not completely helpless. It's not just a Dreidis package in a disposable pack of explosives.
yeah. I really like leaving just, the plain guided missiles on there just to harass from angles that are awkward to defend against. It doesn't have the FTL jump that the Phobos has, but it has the maneuverability, the speed to get there anyway without it. And because it doesn't have real fast firing munitions, it can continue to provide that munitions threat for a long time. I mean, what it fires every 4 turns, so you're looking at how fast crunch. That heavy raider made it surprisingly far.
Yeah, I've been getting it from a pretty nice angle.
Yeah. Plus, I didn't have the Dreidis range. Whoops. My bad. So yeah, you're gonna have what? It's gonna take like 40 turns to actually empty the Nemesis guided missiles because it's only firing every fourth turn.
It takes some time.
Third turn, something like that. Yeah, it's gonna take it a while. Obviously, if you can get it on an angle where your opponent doesn't have any guns, the hacking is entertaining. You can handily disable a ship given, a couple of turns of hacking. So, if you can keep it around to use it for that, do it. Even if it's just something your opponent has to have in the back of his mind of, oh, I got to keep an eye on this Nemesis. Is it going to come hack me now?
Yeah, when's this little asshole going to drop some guided munitions or AP missiles or torpedoes on me from nowhere? Or for them next level strats running a Nemesis with a scrambler that drops it onto the enemy fleet and then hacks a compromised tech base or things like, when's that little pain in the ass going to come around? Like, it's an irritant that will hover and that will at some point need to be dealt with.
Yeah. So just because it's only got one gun, don't throw it away after you scouted stuff. Keep it around, keep harassing. Even if it's just hanging out. The one gun is admittedly rather a bit of a joke. Yeah, it is admittedly rather a bit of a joke. So, I've used that one light gun to help with squadron battles just because it's a light gun. That's about all it's good for. But you get something like 6 damage out of it per turn. It's not going to do a lot.
It's not good times.
Use the hacking and the munition slot on the Nemesis after you've scouted your enemy.
For reference, you can almost completely hack a Manticore to 0 subsystem strength across the board before you get through its armor with its main gun.
Yeah. And in fact, this will actually knock out the firewall on most ships. Will have just like 2 or 3 points of firewall left after one full turn of hacking.
Yeah,
It's
the
only some
Nemesis,
of the
the Nemesis
beefier
hacking's pretty strong.
firewalls like the Jupiter has that will really make it work for it.
There are some other fun little things that you can do with the Nemesis. Now, you can get creative with the munitions that you drop on it. Now, I'm not someone who particularly advocates the use of nukes. Now, there are two cases where I would actually consider a nuke on a ship. One is the Argos, because it can spit out more than one of them. So the whole, you just blow all of the points on one interception and it's gone is sort of like, ugh, which makes you not want to put it on any other ship. Because you'll fire off one nuke, it gets intercepted, it's like, well, there goes all them points. But
Yep.
the Argos can resupply them, so it's a, air quotes, decent candidate. The Nemesis is an interesting candidate for the nuke if you place a nuke onto the Nemesis and you quite explicitly never fire it. Now, you may think, what's the point in spending all those points on something that you're never going to pull the trigger on? Well, the idea is to make your opponent sweat. Quite literally. Once you've reconned the enemy fleet, you keep the Nemesis around and you keep the nuke around, and you keep on moving towards awkward and vulnerable angles with it. And this will force the enemy to make some kind of response. They will need to keep some kind of AMD on hand to deal with that inevitable nuke launch. And you just don't pull the trigger on it. You always keep that response up. And eventually, at some point in the battle, they will either move to deal with the Nemesis, which is an opportunity you can take advantage of, or the AMD will go, or they'll have that moment where everything is cleared away. It's like, oh, okay, well, I'm just going to fire off the nuke then, since you've decided to forget about it. So the Nemesis is open to interesting and weird and creative munition applications if you want to get a bit next level with it.
Yep. Okay. So, alternatives to the Nemesis. Let's go with the SgtZdog next, because it's probably the most popular alternative.
Point on the Nemesis. In 4K games, you can actually run Nemesis in packs.
Yes.
Running 2 or 3 Nemesis in low point games, in the 4K games, they can be quite potent with alpha strikes with
the munitions.
like 2 or 3 munition slots,
Yep.
and then having that many Nemesis hacking you is legitimately a pain in the ass to deal with if you're not prepped for it or you can find the opportunities. Much in the same way that you can pack hunt with a Manticore, just in a different and more creative application. But yeah, SgtZdog.
Yeah, three Nemesis hacking all at once will strip a ship's fire control down probably that turn. So yeah, SgtZdog, not much less maneuverable. As you guys can see here, the SgtZdog can move perpendicular or can be traversing perpendicular to its direction of travel, which lets you, really bring whatever armor facing you want to bear on. It can use its higher broadside counts. So it's got, there we go, scoot close enough we can actually see them, 6 PDCs on each broadside. By contrast, it's only got 4 on front. Though, 4 PDCs, still pretty solid. The 6 PDCs on the broadsides is really where this ship shines, though. And I know it feels, like, oh, it's only 45 armor. That 45 armor on a size 2 ship is really difficult to shoot through. This thing can pretty handily just sit on the outside of range of other capitals if you want to use it against capitals. Where this thing really shines, obviously, is shooting down squadrons. Either making those squadrons try and chase it from while they're still out of range and it's in range, tearing them up. I wonder, does this thing have an accuracy bonus? It does have an accuracy bonus, just like the Revenant does. Nice. That's a big part of why it does so well against squadrons. So, definitely solid option against squadrons. It's not going to do as much against squadrons as the Revenant will. 4 PDCs, or I'm sorry, 6 PDCs, just not gonna quite keep up with the Revenant's 6 lights.
And 4 heavies.
Yeah, and the 4 heavies. But this thing is also sporting the same 45 armor on a broadside that the Revenant has a lot more speed, has a 9 kilometer radius range, which is why it makes a good substitute for a Nemesis. 9 kilometers, not that much less than just over 10 kilometers. So this thing is a really nice replacement for the Nemesis, just because it can provide you that radius range, but now it'll give you some extra guns, whereas the Nemesis is giving you some extra munitions.
Oh, and there is also a fairly common thing that I see a lot of complaints about how they actually deal with the Cerestus and what you do about this thing. Guided munitions.
Yes.
Seriously, if you single player especially, if you want to deal with a Cerestus, just bring guided munitions. In single player, a Janus with 1 AP and 2 guided. If you get all those onto a single armor surface, you will one-shot a Cerestus immediately.
Yeah.
And even if it rotates through its armor facings, it'll be left limping away, and a sporadic gunfire will finish it off. Which, on the same token, when you're using a Cerestus, guided munitions are the bane of you. You can dodge torpedoes for days, and your profile is small enough that at max range, Battlestar artillery and heavy guns will struggle to hit you reliably. Mediums and lights will be a problem, so watch out for dedicated medium and light guns, and things like Minotaurs and Revenants will get a clean bead on the Cerestus and start chopping them up if they get in range.
Oh,
yeah. Generally, yeah, guided munitions, like, if I drop all 3 salvos from my Argos onto that Cerestus, it's probably just going to go bang.
I don't think you'll have quite enough damage just because but it'll be sitting on like 20 hull or whatever. Like, it's not going to be in good shape. On that note, guys, you do have the most armor on your rear armor surface, but that rear armor is rather large, so don't waste it exposing it when you don't have to, because you're going to take a decent number of hits on that rear armor, even when you're broadside onto a target.
And on that token, if a Cerestus loses its navigation, it's kind of screwed.
Yeah, it's gonna die. Obviously, Cylon repair rate's pretty decent, so you'll be able to get it back up. But if they've got enough guns already in range of it when its armor goes out on the navigation, the whole ship is gonna go bang. So, yeah, Cerestus, great substitute. Just a little bit more expensive than the Nemesis. It's what, 550?
I believe it's 550, yes.
Compared to the Nemesis 450. So,
yeah,
it's a solid substitution. At 4K, Cerestus packs of 7 ships are fun to do once in a while.
The Cerestus, just for multiplayer concerns, it shines more in 4K, where I'm trying to get the most out of as little points as possible, in which case getting a higher quantity of lower point cost ships is generally better, being 4K, and the Cerestus is not bad. However, once you get into 8K, you will find that the role of the Cerestus gets blended in with the Revenant, so you'll generally not really want to pick it up. And your scouting piece, I personally am more inclined to the Nemesis because of how big that radius range is, and the utility that you get from the munition slot and the hacking afterwards. But I am just a massive fan of having something with a ton of utility. The Cerestus is pretty clean cut. Like, it shoots at squadrons and it does very reliable chip damage against capitals, actually, especially if you have more than one of the buggers.
Yep.
But like, if you decide that if you want your scout to have a bit of bite, sure, pick up the Cerestus. Personally, more of a preference towards the Nemesis myself.
Yeah. You might also go with the Cerestus if you're finding squadrons are really difficult to deal with. But do bear in mind, of course, that bringing the Cerastes is that 100 points more expensive. You could have gone with 2 Raider upgrades over the Cerastes, so consider carefully what you want your choice to be. On that note, though, talking about squadron presence, Talon. It's the 3rd escort vessel, and can get the same 9-kilometer radius range. We talked about how the light guns on the Revenant are so good. The Talon has 5 light guns now. I don't believe
Not with the enhanced accuracy though.
Yeah, it doesn't have the enhanced accuracy, and so you're gonna feel that. But at 70 armor on each broadside, that's not shabby.
Like for the point cost that it's at, it's pretty well armored. Its firepower is not terrible. It's also really consistent firepower. It's just with the price and the capability of the higher point ships of the Cylons, like if you're bringing along a Talon, it starts to get to the point where it's like, for a few points more, I can bring in Arachne and I get all of these extra things.
Yeah.
And like the point difference that I get left over from the excess of the Talon, I can consider dumping into better raiders, munitions, and stuff like that.
Right.
And especially in 8K, you generally want much more focused, harder hitting picks. The Talon
is in a bit of an awkward situation.
He's one of the few Cylon ships that I look at, and the Talon just kind of like, eh.
Yeah. Which is kind of depressing.
That being said, you got 3 decent, one of those being the best scout options for the Cylons, and that is the Nemesis, the Cerastes, and the Talon. So if you're thinking to yourself, I want a recon piece, and I'm not don't care too much about the utility of the Nemesis, ask yourself a secondary question: what do you really want to bring along with your scout? Do you want to bring along a munition slot? Do you want to bring along a squadron slot? Or do you want to bring along firepower that can help against squadrons and ships? Depending on your answer to that question, depends on whether you bring the Talon, the squadron slot, the firepower against squadrons and capitals, the Cerastes, or the utility package, which is the Nemesis.
Yep.
So if you struggle to make that decision, boil it down to something as simple as that. And as the Cylons, I really do have to stress, you want some kind of recon package. Because the Cylons are all about making informed decisions on the enemy fleet and altering your strategy and tactics based upon what the enemy has brought to the field. Colonials will take this solid lumped wall of flak, guns, and anger to the battlefield. The Cylons need to be much more in flow. They need to dictate the pace. They need to create the opportunities, and to do that, they need to know what the hell they're fighting.
Yeah. One thing to be careful of if you are bringing your Talon, you've got great side armor, but your front and rear armor are really thin, and they take up enough of a portion of the ship that they'll take some hits even while you're broadside onto your targets. So don't expose those more than you have to. The front armor is your hangar, the rear armor is your navigation. Either one of those getting shot out is going to be bad for you. So don't let those get shot at any more than they will just take random hits. Try and keep those 2 surfaces protected. I think. Yeah,
that's the escort.
That's the escorts. So last is the supports. Oh no, not the poor Nemesis! Oh no, where? Oh,
you think I'm shooting the
Cerastes? Not the Cerastes! That's fine. We're gonna hunt that sucker down. I've got the speed to catch up.
Calculating. By your command.
I have to chase you. Okay. So escorts. We'll talk about the Gorgon first because, supports are in general in this game right now kind of the ugly stepchildren.
They really are. And the Gorgon is the one exception.
Yeah, the Gorgon with its goofy smile.
It does have a dirt face.
Yeah, it does.
It is always
suddenly
happy to
useful.
See you.
So it gives 2 support slots, which is awesome.
Yep, that's immediately, if you want to pick nothing else, 2 war drivers, just like that.
Yeah.
No brainer.
The repair bay, which courtesy the last free update, will now also restock munitions on squadrons that are still at full health. This sucker is actually suddenly surprisingly useful in any ship loadout that's needing some more support squadrons.
Yeah, the Gorgon is an excellent squadron support piece. If you can get the squadron brawl to happen away from their fleet, which as a Cylon, you should be doing that. You should not be letting the fighter brawl happen around the enemy fleet when you're playing Cylons.
Really, even as a colonial, we've talked about how dangerous Revenants and Cerastes are. Talents.
The Colonials can get to a point where they can just field enough Vipers to be like, I'm going to just brute force this squadron battle. The Cylons they quite often need to start playing every trick in the book to make sure that they win it, especially if you're fielding a bit fleets which aren't just a ton of base star variants. And the Gorgon can really help with this.
Yeah.
Because it's got the PDCs that are planted on the front of it, and it's got that repair bay. And the most important thing is that the Gorgon has 300% squadron repair.
Yes. This will turn
anything that
a squadron that's in tatters, like 4 hit points or 2 hit points, into a full health squadron in like 2 or 3 turns.
2 turns. 2 turns it can turn around a squadron into combat capable outfit.
Yeah, it'll be combat capable in 2 turns. If you want to, get it up to tip top shape, 3 turns I think we'll have one all the way back at full health from almost 0. It might be 4. It's not long. Way faster than anything else will in the game. Do bear in mind that squadron repair is based on your engineering subsystem. The only real downside, in my opinion, to the Gorgon is it wants 4 subsystems all powered at once, and you can't have that. You want your navigation to keep the speed up so that enemy capital ships don't chase it down. You want your hangar to give evasion to your 2 squadrons that it's got.
Mm-hmm.
You want your fire control to make use out of those PDCs because it's got 4 on the front, or if you're having to run away, it's still got 2 on the back. And you want your engineering to repair something. That's the only real downside, in my opinion, to the Gorgon.
That being said, once we come to the power distribution at the end, we can talk about ways that you can mitigate that need for 4 systems at once. There are things you can do to make that much less painful.
Yep.
But on top of that, the Gorgon also has
machine learning.
Machine learning, which is a very fun and interesting ability that depends very, very much on your ability to keep a squadron alive to get the most out of it. Oh, I was hoping I could have sniped that without you noticing.
What?
But no, the Revenant had to make a turn, didn't it?
It did. It did. What are these guided missiles going at? Are you shooting guided missiles at my poor Nemesis? Rude.
Could be. That could be a thing. But yeah, the Gorgon, machine learning. So what it does is machine learning hooks up to a specified squadron that is within range. Now, they only have to be in range when you initiate it. They can fly out of max range, and they'll still reap the benefits. Every time that they get shot at, and it hits the squadron, they will gain 0.5 evasion up to plus 40 total evasion. By the time they get to plus 40 evasion, the squadron's going to be in a bit of a state.
Yes.
But any squadron that gains machine learning keeps it. So if you then repair that squadron and get it back out, you've basically got a squadron with 40 base evasion plus whatever the parent gives to it.
And Raider Mark 1s are pretty much the only thing that are going to survive all the way to the 40 evasion without needing repairs first.
Yeah, don't waste machine learning on support squadrons.
I like putting it on the war drivers. It can add a decent bit to the survivability of the war drivers. And if they make it back to repair and go back out
Which
with
they
that
typically
evasion.
won't.
Yeah, they typically won't. But
If
since
the
they
enemy
tend to
sees
be the
War
thing that
Driver,
gets
War
shot
Driver
at,
dies.
yeah. So, kind of consider where you want to put that machine learning, but it is really nice. So let's also talk about some of the other support squadrons, because the the Gorgon is where those really start to be reasonable choices, because this gives you those
Yes.
extra slots that makes bringing them useful.
So
And
if you want to bring heavy raiders, if you want to bring Vespids, if you want to bring
can anybody
Scorpions.
say 7 Gorgons with 14 heavy raiders?
Like,
because
so
troll.
then you just board everything, and then once you're boarded, you recall, and you just bring them back to these forward Gorgons, resupply them, you go out and you just dump more Centurions on the problem. But I mean, you can also do this with like Scorpions, and you can create this battery of long-range missiles that can just keep on reloading.
Yes.
So if you get 2 Scorpions on the Gorgon itself, and just grab a Scorpion from another ship, say like a base star in its support slot, you can run these and just keep them around the Gorgon, just have them fire off their little missile salvos, and then once they go empty, just have all 3 jump back into the Gorgon, jump out, and you can just keep up this stream of missiles. And if anything comes close, they've got 3 Scorpions worth of firepower to deal with.
And I'm thinking about this. I wonder if you could actually improve the rate of fire of Scorpions by recalling them the turn after they fire and having them set back and then relaunching and setting up.
Pretty sure the munition reload rate is tracked between launches.
Oh, is it? Okay.
It's a nice thought, but I'm pretty sure it's tracked.
Yeah.
That being said, if you want to run Vespids and you want to get more than 1 salvo to them, which on most ships, if you run Vespids, you'll typically get 1 salvo to them, and then with the way that the battle goes, the Vespids will either get shot down, or by the time they come all the way back to the base stars and gone back out, the battle's more or less decided anyway.
Yeah.
The one ship that can stay near, and I emphasize
near and not in.
Don't be in gun range with a Gorgon.
It will
It's
die.
got a nice little bit of armor to it, but it will get shredded, and that's bad news.
Yeah.
It can do very quick turnaround on its 2 Vespids and an extra one. If you want to do the old jumping and hovering around and flipping between squads, you can do that, but me personally, for simplicity's sake, I tend not to go any more than 3 support squadrons to a single Gorgon, because it starts getting messy and starts increasing downtime when you add more in it. The term I'm looking for is diminishing results.
Yeah.
But if you want quick forward resupply, the Gorgon's got you. And it's cheap enough that you can actually throw this thing in, and it contributes enough to your fleet and to the fighter battle and to the impact that it can have on enemy capitals and support squadrons, that it is a support that is worth bringing up.
Yeah.
Unlike another support ship that we know.
Yeah, we'll talk about that here in a moment. So yeah, the Gorgon, very nice. It's almost at an escort level, because it will even get the 9-kilometer radius range of the Cerastes and the Talon too. So it is almost like an escort. I'm almost mostly still calling it a support, because that's how it's described in the store page for it.
The Gorgon?
Yeah, the Gorgon.
Yeah, it doesn't actually take up a support slot in the campaign, which the Cylons don't really
have anyway.
No.
Yeah.
It's just kind of a moot point.
Yeah.
But it is, for all intents and purposes, a quote-unquote support ship, with the way that it's priced and the way that it's designed and what it does.
Yeah.
If you want support element support, you want help with your squadron battles, the Gorgon is not a terrible pick, especially if you're going for high price base stars and your running's shy on points, but you still want that extra bit of punch, that extra bit of help. The Gorgon's got your back.
Yeah. It does really just an excellent job. Even if you've got, like, say, a bunch of Talons and Arachnes and Phobos and Argos, where you've got a bunch of these things that don't have any support slots, bringing a Gorgon for those dedicated support slots and just the general ability to support the fighters that you do have is an excellent choice. Especially if you don't have the points for a full Cerberus. The Gorgon at half the points of a Cerberus is a really solid choice.
Which I suppose brings us to the red-headed stepchild.
Yeah. Okay.
We don't even have it here.
Yeah, we don't even have it here because you accidentally brought a Talon instead. But the Hydra.
You said bring a Talon. I bought a Talon. Okay, don't you pin this
on
me.
I didn't say bring a Talon. I sent you a picture. Anyway,
that picture had a Talon.
Did it?
And I stand by it.
All right, now I have to scroll up and look.
That looks like
that could
be a
Hydra.
That's an angle. That's an angle thing.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
I couldn't see that it was chunky vertical.
Yeah,
looked like a Talon to me. Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, so the Hydra, not particularly useful. The hull repair is admittedly more useful than an armor repair for the Cylons because
Cylons don't have much armor.
They don't have much armor anyway, whereas they do have big tanky hull values that makes that pretty useful. With that said, base stars not, they're almost always either gonna die or live. And having that extra bit of repairing doesn't usually make the difference. And anything besides them usually just straight up dies.
And I suppose if we throw this out here, there's an inherent problem with hull repair in general. Hull repair generally means that you have taken all of your armor down on a specific facing. So it's all well and good that you repair the hull back, but oftentimes you are taking critical subsystem damage whenever you get shot back there. Like, you can start repairing all of the hull back of a Kratos, but if you've lost all of your rear armor and that's where you're getting shot at, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Target acquired.
The other function that it has is the coordinated reload, which it fires off. It has a 3-turn cooldown. But what it does is it immediately drops anything in range. Their reload time goes down by a turn, which if you do that, like for example an Arachne that's on 1-turn reload, just boop, instantly gets its munitions back. If you've got a base star, it helps cut off a lot of the wait time for that. But the problem is, in multiplayer, what you get for bringing a Hydra, like, you could have bought a Nemesis, you could have bought a Talon nearly, you could have bought a Cerestus nearly, shit, you could have bought a Gorgon, you could have bought...
Yeah. I mean, I feel like if it had 9-kilometer Dratus range, it might be funny to bring along. Like, if it had a really good Dratus range, it might be funny to bring along, to support your Arachnes, but... Like, it doesn't have anything that you really care about. So, yeah, don't. Now, I feel like I should mention it. Like, if people want, you did have an interesting idea for a meme fleet using Hydras.
Okay, so I'm gonna throw this out there. If you really wanted to try and meme on someone, there is something that you could really do. You could run 3 Hydras, a Kratos, and 3 Arachne. And the idea behind it is that you have Arachne that just can constantly throw out their munitions, a Kratos that can already constantly throw out its munitions, and 3 Hydras that can just repair the Kratos for days as it takes damage. But the intrinsic problem with that is the moment you enter gun range, you will take that much focused fire that the Kratos just dies before it can repair any meaningful amount.
Yeah.
And you'll also just bleed the Arachnes dry. Like, it's a kind of thing where it's a high-impact surprise meme fleet. And I suppose if you played it alongside a whole bunch of Scorpions, and you just, like, belted the enemy in hard guns and munitions, you might catch someone by surprise. Like, literally, the Hydra, it's used in construction of meme fleets. It's used for trolling folks. It's used for trying to catch people off guard, and as soon as you've caught them off guard once, they'll know what's up, and you'll never catch them with it again.
Yeah.
Serious fleets, competitive fleets, the Hydra does it. It's like the Celestia, unfortunately, it just doesn't have a place. It saddens me, but it's kind of how it is.
Yeah, it's even worse because I want to say the total repair you get out of the Hydra is a decent bit lower than what you can get out of a Celestra. There's just so much that's not gonna go well for you. So, yeah. Do you want to talk about
Power distribution?
power distribution? I think.
Okay. First and foremost, with power distribution, it doesn't matter what ship it is. There is no one size fits all.
No.
There are fairly go-to setups and settings that you might want to go for, which are pretty nice start of the match generalist things. But the critical thing to bear in mind is that power settings are not posture. You don't just slap it onto full offensive until a firefight's over. As a firefight progresses, you can dynamically be changing what you've actually got, depending on what's happening. Like, for example, a Revenant. The standard is running 30 navigation, 30 fire control, 15 engineering. That's the standard. When you start fighting with something, if you can crack its navigation, you can divert power away from your own navigation and slap it up to engineering. If you're in a firefight that's looking like it can go either way, you can do the same thing. If you get boarded, you're going to need to find power to transfer and slap it onto your armory to get rid of them. Like, if a Revenant gets boarded by a Raptor, that's really bad.
It is.
Because the power decrease and the accuracy decrease hurts. For a base star, a fairly typical thing that you'll want to run is full navigation, full fire control, and full hangar, for example, so you can deploy munitions at full capacity, your squadrons are performing as good as they can, and you keep on moving around where you need to get to. An Argos will run a fairly similar thing, except an Argos will keep its armory fully powered after you've fired your first salvo, so you're always reloading as quickly as possible.
And a handy thing to do, a lot of us do this, not everyone, but just leave your Argoses from turn 1 armory all the way on full, that way you don't forget. But
yeah, until you've got...
that is, if you want to be super efficient, don't do it, but a lot of us do. Just go ahead and power that armory on the Argos from turn 1. I do want to mention, like, the Cerberus and really the base star too. On turns when you're not firing munitions, which obviously for the Cerberus is every turn, but if you're not firing the guns or the munitions, flip your power control back over to the engineering, just because those two are so vulnerable to torpedoes. If your opponent has them, he quite possibly will be firing them at you. You want to make sure you're surviving that experience.
But yeah, I cannot stress it enough. Don't drop all of your power into a set of systems and then call it a day.
Yeah, you definitely need to be flexible about where you put them.
Every turn,
be ready to change them.
Like, for me, when I was getting into multiplayer, I had a habit of where I took really long with my turns. Like, people think I take long with my turns now. Compared to people, I used to be even worse. I would take straight up to that last second on 240. And that was because I had the habit of every single turn, I would double check every ship's subsystem power to make sure it was appropriate to the situation. And as you start to play more and more and more, you will learn when it's appropriate to have power put into your fire control, when it's better to have it in engineering, when it's better to sacrifice some of your navigation, or when you want to juice up your tech bay. Like,
yeah,
there is a lot of context in the power distribution for the Cylons. There is basically no one size fits all.
Let's see. I think that probably covers pretty much everything we need to talk about. I don't think there's anything else. Can you think of anything else?
Just to reiterate what I said at the start, I guess. If you're playing the Cylons, you're not playing Colonials. You're playing to set the tempo of the battle. You're not a sledgehammer. A lot of it is
By your command.
it's hammer and anvil approaches. You need to put them between two hard places, force your opponent into making choices that are going to suck whichever one they take. That is the kind of play that you need to go for as a Cylon.
Yeah.
Confirmed.
Do you have anything else that you'd like to
No.
say with regards?
I think that pretty much covers it. I'm just letting your Kratos eat like my entire fleet here.
Nom, 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 nom.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining us. Again, you've been listening to myself, SgtZdog. I won this last Battlestar Galactica Deadlock tournament, and joining me has been Sir Wagglepuss III. He won the previous two. This has been part 3 of our tutorial series. The first one was ship or fleet composition. The second one was colonial ships in detail. We've just done Cylon ships in detail. After this, we'll start getting into, how to do specific matchups, if you've got this versus your opponent has that. So keep an eye out for when we announce those coming up. Thank you all for joining us. I'm going to go ahead and keep running this battle until Waggle deletes the last of my ships here.
And I suppose I should also add, if anyone has any questions on any of the ships that we've not particularly covered here, feel free to ask them over in the Battlestar Galactica Deadlock Discord. I'm always happy to answer questions. If worst case scenario, I'll just get back to you when I'm back online.